A little bit of this history from this section. This is called Green Mound Cemetery. It was also called Con Creek Cemetery. In 1860, the first burial was this gentleman right here. His name is Richard Brown. I don't think he's related to the other Brown, Doc Brown, and a lot of you are related to that family. I know that the Balls came out with, on one of their trips with a wagon train, there was a Brown, and I don't know whether this is that gentleman. But this used to be Ball property, and so there were about 40 burials that took place here on J.D. Ball's property before he deeded it over to the cemetery district. So the fact that they have the memorials is unusual because the memorial company, I think I had a picture of it here, was started in 1880 in Santa Rosa. So I think what happened is that everybody did their own memorials, probably out of wood or stone, and maybe after the memorial company started in actual business in 1880, maybe they actually came back and made the memorials. This is not unusual. You know, if one spouse dies, is a temporary situation, and when the next spouse dies is when they go ahead and invest in their, their final markers. So he was the first one to be buried here, but the first one that had any visible marker was Maria Smalley, and there's a bright red bush down over there, pyracantha, I think. Anyway, she's under that. So we're gonna be visiting her in a minute. So here's J.D. Ball, and he picked this out before he died. According to his obituary, he knew he was dying, and he arranged to have this obelisk. So don't ask me how it works that, because Melissa's on here too, Melissa Flabola. So anyway, this is J.D. Ball, and I've got some notes. So he married Melissa Kendall, and there you go. There's Matt Kendall's side. So if he were here, he could tell us more about that. One of his sons is buried right here behind Jeff, and his little daughter, La Paz, is buried next to, so that's Chardon and Paz. So you're going to see a lot of tiny graves. Just a lot of people lost very young children, a lot of them. Okay, so he was a sheep rancher, orchardist. The Kendall family. Let's see if there's any. I don't want to keep this going. I could go forever, but I don't want to keep this going too long.
Alonzo Kendall.
Yes.
Kendall.
So here we go. Jeff's here. Jeff, do you want to say anything about the Kendall Ball family?
They were some of the first to ride in the valley. Well, Kendall wasn't, but Ball was for sure. I don't know anything beyond the fact that Melissa married in the Kendall family. He ended up, when he left here in 1872 or so, Kendall, he went over to the coast, and Ball stayed here until his death. And it's the property down here that has the barn sale. That was his house.
Oh, okay.
As a matter of fact, that palm tree that's standing in that yard down there, I have a picture of it when he was still alive. That thing was about that tall.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
So that's the roots of the Anderson Valley, Boonville, where it is now. It's kind of tied all this together.
So Melissa was a twin, and her mother died right after childbirth, and so she ended up. She had twins, Alonzo and Melissa, in 1835. So anyway, we're gonna go over here. This is
I have a question.
yes.
What's the reference to the anchor, like a Navy Anchor?
Yeah, I don't know. That would be, I actually don't have, I don't know.
Sorry.
No, I'm not an expert. Anybody that knows anything clearly, that's naval, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure that is. You're that or Merchant Marines or something.
Is this on Find a Grave?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's also, everybody here is on Family Search as well. If anybody wants to do genealogy, free site is called familysearch.org, and that's the Mormon group, and it's amazing. So everybody here is pretty much on there. On the last, I started about 14 years ago when it was really only 14 years ago when it was still paper. And now everything's digitized. So it's interesting because I keep finding people that are buried here. The most recent one I found is the wife of this man is Frederick Hahn. And they had they were up on the Greenwood Trail, they called it. And they had a ranch on the Greenwood Trail. So that was the road from out to Elk. And they're really, now anybody can chime in here and help me with this story, but there's only two major routes to get to the coast from Anderson Valley. And one is to go out the Greenwood Elk Road, down by Hendy Woods, beyond Philo. And the other one is to go out the Ornbonne Valley. So those are the two main Indian trails that went out to the coast. So when they came, it was very early. Go back. They did not have children. So they arrived in 1864.
The Manchester Road? That's
Yes.
another one, right? Matter of fact, Schwinn is the one that built that over there.
So yet another trail.
Yet another trail.
So it wasn't until do you remember when they finally built the road that went from Philo out to the coast that we use now?
Well, you went on Navarro Ridge is where it went. That would have been early on. I have a map that shows this big river highway that was they had surveyed it in 1858, something like that. 1850s, I'm pretty sure. So that was the first trail that they actually surveyed.
Yeah, it took a long time to get anywhere.
Yeah.
You can tell your story now, Ron, about the penny postcard.
Yeah, I do have it with me. My grandmother in Cloverdale and Ingram would write to her sister here in Boonville on these penny postcards. I have a whole album of penny postcards back and forth, and the great story is the grandmother in Cloverdale says, "I'm putting the three boys on the mule, Sarah," or somebody like that. And I have a picture of the mule and the three boys on it. My dad hadn't been born yet. And they're leaving on like Monday, and if you don't see them by Thursday, you might want to go out and look for them.
That's from Boonville to Cloverdale.
Yeah, it was a big trip.
Wow. Okay. So anyway, when I was doing research to get ready for today, I put in Concrete Cemetery as a search. And I came up with Susanna, his wife, was buried next to him. So I have her obituary. So now I have yet another person that is on the index. Okay, Prathers. Let's talk about the Prathers. They're right here. I'm trying to not make us go chronologically because then we would just be going zing, zing, zing like a pinball machine. So this is the Prathers. And I noticed, if I do this right, I don't have to do a lot of talking. Is there anybody that would like to speak about the Prathers, or are they connected to the Prathers?
This lady's very convinced.
I don't know. This is a Prather. Hold that, Miriam. So let me tell you what I have, and then you can add to it. William and Diana. Diana, his wife. So she's Diana Elizabeth. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And he's William Prather. He's on this side. Diana was the sister of Amos Burgess Ingram and Daniel Cass. Mm-hmm. So she was the sister of two more Ingrams. And their parents, those Ingram kids, their parents were Daniel Holder and Nancy Ingram. And they moved to Napa County in their old age. And when they went over to Calistoga, they got exposed to smallpox. And so the two parents and two of their sons died of smallpox. And they weren't allowed, according to one of the books, they weren't allowed to be buried in a cemetery because people were so afraid of the smallpox contagion. So where they were buried is now Highway 12 because they paved over it.
No, it's
Ellen,
actually,
This is Ellen Ingram. It's an Ingram.
there were 5 members of the family that died from smallpox. Apparently, young men coming back from the war brought it with them from the ship. And they weren't allowed in the cemetery, so they were buried on a corner of the ranch. And years ago, 40 or 50 years ago, Caltrans redid Highway 128, and they contacted my grandfather Alvacass and Uncle Dan, and the men were afraid that smallpox would be released if they removed the bodies, so they were paved over. And there was supposed to be a marker, a memorial marker, and it never happened.
I got the same letter giving them permission to pave over the graves.
But they are buried somewhere in the area near Black Diamond Mountain Road outside of Calistoga.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. Hold on to that for a second.
And Amos Burgess's marker is down here. I hadn't seen it until a couple years ago. And it just says Amos Burgess, sister of Nancy Ingram, or brother of Nancy
Yes.
Ingram.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so
According to my family memory, Amos was with the hunters that first came to the valley in the early 1850s. And he wrote to Nancy and her husband and said, you need to move out here. So they came out in 1859 in August.
so can you talk at all about Joseph Jr., who was on the stagecoach when the robbery took place, and he told them to beat it or he was going to shoot him up, and they were the Gibbons kids, and they were from Cloverdale.
I don't know Joseph Jr.
Yeah, so Joseph William Jr., husband of Gibbons, so this is his brother-in-law that was attempting to hold up the stage. He went to a family gathering in Cloverdale with his wife, and this kid came. The kid thought that he was going to be arrested, so he shot him. So, unfortunately.
oh geez.
So, he got shot by Joseph Gibbons. Yeah. Okay, so Praters. So we're going to move on.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, you're the ones that probably can answer them, though.
Well, the Prathers were legitimately, they were Philo, basically. That was their area where they settled and lived and everything. Why wasn't there ever a Philo cemetery built? Did you ever read any reason why this was? Because there's actually, and also needs to be noted, is that there's an earlier cemetery on the Babcock Cemetery where some of the really old timers too were buried up there. So if you don't find your family here, they could be up there. Now, is there a register of those graves up there?
Yes.
They're marked great. Okay, that's all I need to know.
So it used to be that, so the Rawls family owned the property where the high school is now. And the very, very, very first burial in the valley was Rhoda Anderson. And she was buried in 1857 on the Rawls property, which wasn't deeded to the cemetery district for many years. 1857, so that was the first one, and the second one was 1860. So it used to be there was a bridge. Ornbonne Road came and joined up with this road,
Right.
and it had a bridge that got, I don't know when.
It was
but-
it was a summer crossing. They never really had anything permanent there. Just just summertime crossing.
Okay, so you could go from here,
Oh, yeah.
take a right on that, and go right to the other cemetery in a fairly straight line, rather than the way we do it now, which is going out to Mountain View. So up there are Rawls, and then the Rawls sold the property to Babcock, so it's the Rawls-Babcock Cemetery. But yes, everybody is accounted for that we know of. I mean, it's so hard because, it's very hard to know who's underground, who has lost their marker, the marker has decayed or what have you.
And those ones you said are on the Rawls property, they're still there then, huh?
Yes, there's a lot of Rawls up there.
And some of the Prathers are buried too, right?
So the next
on other side.
cemetery that's important, there's 5 cemeteries in the cemetery district. And the first one that's farther down is across from the Gallons. In fact, it used to be often it's called the Gallons, but it's the Shields Cemetery. And so that has a lot of the Schwins and all the folks that came in down there, the Swiss group and everybody else. This is the next one. and then there's the one that's up above the high school. If you're ever driving by the high school and you just look up, you can see the markers outlined against the sky up there. And then the next one is Yorkville. A little bit harder to find, but it's between, it's the, I'd say the old or Yorkville. So it's a little bit, if you know the Ron Rice property that used to be the Hyatt Hotel, that's where that one is. And then the newest one is the Ingram Cemetery, which Jimmy's here. Jimmy is somewhere there. It's on his property. So anyway, so there's 5 of them. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to walk over and visit Susan Stubblefield. She's down here. So there's some old markers here that you have to be careful of.
Yeah.
If you can get down here, then you can look down in A section. So that would be kind of cool if you can come all this way. So I'm pretty sure this is a Stubblefield rose because it doesn't have a lot. It's not tremendously thorny, but there's some debate about this. I did a program this last year where I contacted the descendants of about 14 people and asked them if they would like to put a marker up for their ancestor that we are virtually positive we know where they are. So this is Susan Stubblefield, and she's famous in the valley. She came into Yorkville in 1857, I think New Year's Eve or something, so they could count 1857, but 1858 with her husband Murray, Mr. Murray. So she had already come from, I think, New York, and she had been given her a rose by her mother to put in the wagon and to keep with her. And she managed to keep this rose, not this particular one, but she managed to keep the mother of this rose alive through all of her travels. And so obituary for her son Clody Murray said that he was buried here at Greenmount. And I'm just, since his wife is the one right there, Ida, and this is his mom, and this is where the rose got planted, we're going with this. Okay, so this is so we can remember Clody. This was her son with Murray. She lost 3 husbands. She was widowed 3 times. And so 2 of Murray and her, the son that was stepson from her first husband, Sprinkles, they're in Yorkville. And so there's 3 or 4 of these in Yorkville, these stakes for people. So she was the only doctor they had for a long time until Doc Brown came along, and we're going to visit him. So she was, she'd get on her horse and she'd cross raging rivers. She'd do whatever she could. So she was very important to a lot of people. She didn't come all the way from Yorkville when she responded. She was Yorkville until Stubblefield died, and then she came down and I think she was close to Bear Wallow. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway. And I think her final home was right on the corner of 128 and no, the road that goes to the back of the fairgrounds. Lambert. So on the corner of Lambert, so I think it's a Johnson that lives there now. Yeah. So I think that was her home at the end.
Valerie, I have a couple of questions. With modern medicine, is smallpox contagious after death?
Oh, I don't. Anybody here want to say whether smallpox is contagious after death? I don't know.
And also, I'm wondering about, I thought the Rawls Ranch was where like an estates is, and so maybe they had vast or multiple properties.
Yeah, the Rawls Ranch, as a matter of fact, I can answer you exactly by reading you a survey of the Rawls Ranch area, because they went all the way up to Lone Pine, which was peachland, all the way up. So I thought you would enjoy this. He said, this is Ernest, Sharkey, apparently, thank you, I got a hold of them. So, this, my dad bought the old Sherman homestead. I don't remember what happened to the bill of sale, but the property description on it ran something like this. Starting with a big redwood tree in the gulch, 400 feet below my cabin, I run 1/2 mile south to a point on the top of the ridge near Alec's cabin. From there I run east 1/2 mile across my gulch past the top of the next ridge where Smalley shot the bear. And from there I run back north 1/4 mile to where Tarwater lost his saddle. And from there back to the point of the beginning. The only thing that would make that more incomprehensible is if it was written in Bootling. That's like, go find the cow in the field, start there. Okay, so thank you for that question. They had a lot of property.
Also, talking about big tracts of land.
Yeah.
I know that J.D. Ball, his first house was
You gotta do this.
the first cabin that when J.D. Ball first arrived in the valley was where the Haynes Gallery is now. It was just in that lower section right below, and it stood there until the 60s or so. Then they just tore it down. It was a little, like a log cabin looking kind of a thing. And so he owned from there clear down to here.
Yeah.
That whole basically the side of the valley. But those got sold off and donated, so that's great that we have this land here now, huh?
Yes. So down there, and the only way to access it is we're going to walk out this way. You can see that. You see the top of the stairs right there by Ron. Okay, that's the stairway to go down to section A. So afterwards, you might want to go down. You can't pull off the road and park. There's no safe parking for cars. So that's the only access is to come park up here and walk down. So the Berry family is down there, James Berry and Susan Cameron. So when you start to hear some of these names, you recognize street names. His son, Edward, and Crystal Clow. So I've got a Clow here.
Related.
They were the proprietors of the Boonville Hotel. So Susan, both of them were from Newfoundland, or New Brunswick, Canada. Also down there is an Estes ancestor who served under General Custer. He was in the 19th Canvas Cavalry during the Indian Wars, but he was a mule skinner, and he was not in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Also down there we have Christopher Columbus Huffaker, who was in the Civil War. And thank you. And his wife Julia was buried beside him. That's how we found him. And down there also is the first Maine, John Wesley Maine, who was the father of Arlene Maccabee. So Arlene married Glenn Maccabee, and their children are, all together now, Verna, Richard, and Marion.
And
Right?
Sharon.
And Sharon.
There's
Sharon.
another one, Sharon.
Okay, and Sharon. Where's Sharon?
She's in Arkansas now,
Okay.
but
All right.
she's the baby.
Well, thank you. Let's see, one of the sad stories down here is there's a little guy named Edward Reuben Berry, and at 2 years old, he swallowed strychnine, and they couldn't save him.
Wow.
So he's down there as well. Also, Rose, John Casper Rose, who is the brother of William Rose, which a lot of you are related to. And so he was in the 1st Battalion of Mountaineers Infantry, who were raised, this group was raised up during the year 1863 for service against Indians in Humboldt County in northwest of California. So we have here, we're going to meet some people that were in the Bear Flag Revolt. We have the Indian War, not the Indian War back east, but, you know, the eradication of Indians. Civil War. So we have a lot of military people here, a lot of military history. Okay, so we're going to walk right over here. We're going to go visit,
Just
go up here.
Yeah, do it up on the
Okay, thank you. Okay, up the hill.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you found out. So, you know what time? Well, they haven't told you, because they haven't told me.
This is the Witherell family here in this big enclosure.
And we'll come back, but
I might get something in the mail.
But you probably were on the urban street. That's where you were that last. Yeah. And that's I told now. Yeah.
Wait, so
Okay, so is anybody related to the Witherells? So they had 2 children they lost. A baby here. The gentleman was Josiah, and he had 2 wives, not at the same time. And so they lost a baby, and it had no name. So I found data that they lost an infant. And they also lost their son John in a logging accident out on the coast. So, if you looked at those 2, you know, that's a guess. But I think it's a pretty good guess that that's the baby and that's the 19-year-old. Yeah.
It says they arrived in 1862. Wow.
Yeah,
It
that's
says on the little marker that.
that's really, really early.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so just trying to keep it manageable here. We're going to walk over here to Maine. Let's see if I can. We're going to walk over here to the DeYoungs. This family was in Santa Rosa during the 1906 earthquake, and the mother and 2 babies were killed during the earthquake. So Edward, the husband, eventually married again, worked out on the coast, died in San Francisco, and he is buried here, but he has no marker.
So the 1906 earthquake that ruined San Francisco also ruined Santa Rosa?
Oh yeah, there was major damage in Santa Rosa. Anybody want to speak to that? Yeah, Santa Rosa lost a tremendous amount of buildings.
So the fault, is that the San Andreas fault line that goes through the city?
I
and
can't
back there?
answer that, Lynn.
Anybody
You're
know?
just assuming that I have more information than I do. Okay, right here. This is Jean's. This is the Black family. Daniel Jeans, and you know, somebody says he's a former slave, and I couldn't find information about that. He's the father of 2 of these. 2 of his sons are buried here. 2 of them are not buried here. But he was from Missouri, and he ended up in the 1870 census when he was 33. He was in the voter registration rolls. So that's good, right? Yeah. So he was every year. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of data about him because every year he was in the voter registration rolls. He took it very seriously. So one of these boys was a little bit more into difficulties than the other one, but he was an upstanding citizen, and I believe his house is on 80 Way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The little blue house from the barn sale driveway right across the street.
Okay, so next time you go to the barn sale, look at the little house across their driveway. He's there. And I'm not going to say who lives there now because we don't want to bugger. Okay.
I have a couple of stories about the Jeans real quick.
Yes, please.
My family, Howard June, Blossom June, they ended up with the property where the Jeans lived, out just off of Hornbond Road, going out that way, about 2 miles out. Anyway, so I grew up running around in that old orchard that they had, where they had actually they dried apples and stuff out there. Did their work. He ended up, on I think it was his second marriage. Now we called him John, but it was John Daniel or Daniel John. I can't remember which was the father. Who married? Second marriage was into. He got married to a Pomo. We think Pomo Indian, Native American. And if you see the picture in 90 of the schoolhouse, little red schoolhouse with all the children in front of it. And there's a picture of either George or I can't remember the other son's name. You can tell that he has characteristics of some of the Pomo or the Native American look to him. So they were out there and they did their thing, and they used to come into town. And my great grandmother, Martha Duff Vestal, they had the Missouri Hotel in town. And when he would come into town, she'd let him eat there at the dining room, but he had to eat in the kitchen because she was from Virginia. So she still had a little bit of the of being that way. That's you're kind of raised with it. And so she was nice, but not completely. But he used to come into town, and everybody respected him and got along with it. To think that they were here in the 1860s, 70s, something like that, when they first got here.
Yeah.
And then the last son, like you say, died, and he was down there. He ended up, the other one got accused of a shooting and a murder. He had to serve time in prison for something that was self-defense.
Samuel.
Yeah. Exactly. So I thought I'd just mention that because I think that was really unfair. Poor guy.
Yeah.
But that was the end of that lineage. There wasn't any kids that I know of. So.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeff. We're going to walk over and meet the McJimsies. A little careful we don't knock over toe stones. Alicia does a wonderful job keeping these cemeteries, all 5 cemeteries, trimmed up. I mean, you can see that, things fall and trees fall. And so we're going over to this area.
What's the story with this one? What's this?
I think that's a McJimsey.
Oh, it doesn't have any markers at all?
No, and I was going to try to find a McJimsey. I think there's one person there. So this is available. Yeah, that's what you got to do sometimes. My husband taught me a technique that you use the flashlight and you, you shine it straight up and you get the little dip,
So
shadows.
is there a map which have the
No,
names?
It's so limited the amount of information that the cemetery district has been able to provide.
Right in front of Jeff.
No,
Yeah.
There's a little wood one. It's all
Looks
worn
like
out.
there's 2.
That would be something to, because this obviously meant
Hey,
something.
I would like a club. I would like, instead of a reading club, we could have a mystery club. I've got a lot of mysteries. I'd love help.
Well, now, before they signed off on this, you said the cemetery committee or whatever was deeded this land from J.D. Ball.
And whatever
Was
information
the county
he
ever
had.
involved in that?
No. And
So
so
they
they
were
started in
independent.
1966, right, Jimmy? 1966 was the beginning of this being
1966.
66.
So who took care of
There
it
was a-
before that?
There was a fire at some point, with some records at the county level. Some point in the 1800s, there's like a period of 20 years where there's some records lost. I don't know.
Oh, the fire at the county level.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
I never did finish telling you this now that you've asked those questions. In 1881, J.D. Ball, donated the land here for this Green Mound Cemetery. And it wasn't A, it was just this B section. In 1939, J.M. and Fronia Ganochi deeded the land for $10 to the AV Cemetery District, and it was back quite a ways to, C section, and then it wrapped around. They added A and probably C, although I'd have to do more research to be sure. And then in 1940, burials began across that road in section C. In 1970, after the California State Expressway is formed on the east side of the cemetery, the Johnston family sells the piece of their land that remained on the west after construction of the new highway to the AV Cemetery District. So the AV Cemetery then extended from AV Way to Cloverdale to the Sea Highway. Yeah. And then 1979, burials began in Section D. In 1980s, late burials began in Section E. And 2005, burials began in Section F. And the other thing that's, you know, I rely heavily on obituaries and newspaper articles, but they didn't really start till after late 1870s. 1877 was the very first Ukiah Dispatch Democrat and the Mendocino Coast Beacon. So, you know, we were totally reliant on family records up to then. So I would love to have a chance, Jimmy, to look in the archives and see if they have lists, because
That's a shame, because that's a beautiful.
yeah, yeah, we love to know what the original primary resources are always best.
The deeds
Okay.
are typically with the county. That's where it gets.
Well, who knows when they had to? Most people bury their people at their ranch. You know, you didn't. So I'm not quite sure why J.D. Ball put Richard Brown in here. I'm not sure. So okay, we're gonna walk over to the McJimsies.
There's a lot going on there. There's fun. Something there.
So right before we get to the McJimsies, I'm going to stop here with the Ontis. This is, he was married to Susan Weaver, and they were a family that were also from Yorkville. But this, the only reason I could figure out this was the Ontis was that somebody scratched Ontis on that, which was very helpful actually. And then over here, it says grandmother. Grandmother Elliott. Well, that's a little confusing because she's not an Ontis and she's not a Weaver. So she was Bernard, and she married Weaver, and then when he died, she married Elliott. And Elliott's son was one of the primary people on the Bear Flag Revolt. So I think it was Bill Elliott. So that was Bear Flag. If you go up to Rawls Cemetery, then you have the Beesons, their Bear Flag. And in a minute, we're going to go talk about Maria Smalley, and her grandfather was on the other side of the Bear Flag problem. So there's a lot of military history here. So here's the Jimsies. It's hard to see because he's here and she is here. So it takes a while to find people. Here, I'm going to hold this for me.
I saw a McJimsey back there, 1877. Those two different ones.
No, probably not.
There's like three McJimseys right there.
Yes, there's a lot of watering. So this is first generation. I'm trying to kind of do first generation, but gosh, you know. So McJimsey, thank you. McJimsey was also called the judge. He was elected here to be the judge from 1868 to 1881. So he and his wife came out to join his sons. They had two sons, all in port. And those two guys, those sons, had a droving business. So on the Johnson Ranch, right at the corner of 253 and 128, all the Johnson property, that's where they called it that whole thing they called the corners. But that's where they had their operation for their horses. And they'd take these horses, sheep, whatever, pigs, whatever they were droving, and they'd take them to Petaluma. So they had a business, and so the father and mother came out. They married into, Susan Stubblefield's daughter married one of them. But he was out at the coast, and I think he was out on the Ornbon Trail, and he fell from an ocean cliff collecting seagull eggs, or whatever eggs he was collecting. And so he badly broke his leg, and it was a terrible break. So they managed to get him back to the house. So if you go to the corner of 128 and 253, there's a couple of tall eucalyptus trees that are very close together. And that was how you entered into their house area. So they're still there. So he was in dire situation. I mean, so the boys rode to Cloverdale, and they got the doctor. They rode back, And so that was another couple days of agony. And Susan Stubblefield came to help, and they amputated his leg. So the judge had one wooden leg. And so he would arrive somewhere stomping in with that wooden leg. And it kind of was a symbol of authority. And then he'd say, "I command the peace." So he was quite a character. His son, Thomas, had land, and it's so frustrating when you're reading, because they say he had land from Hutzel to the William Clay home. You're going, they donated the land where the Vets building is now for a school. So, does anybody want to talk at all about the McJimsies? Okay. Yes, come on.
I'm not feeling very well right now.
Okay, yeah, well then we don't want to stress you. Take it easy. So we're going to walk over here to Maria Smalley. Before I talk about Maria Smalley, this is Charles Hurst, and he was killed in the woods. The two boys were out hunting deer, and he unfortunately was mistaken for a deer, so that happened to him. So, Maria. So we found, actually, I'm going to show you when we get back to the Rose Room all the books that I use for research, and one of the most important ones is Clem Harryford's diary. And they were talking about Maria Smalley. And so I knew that the newspaper article said that Maria Smalley was the first person buried in the cemetery. So I think she's the first person that they knew of that was buried in the cemetery. But she has a fascinating history. She has 3 sets of great-grandparents who traveled north from Sinaloa in the De Anza expedition. Whoa, that's amazing. So Maria's mother, Juana Maria, I can't do this. I'm not good at this, but you can help me.
You're doing fine.
Bojores is the daughter of Bartolome. So he was the one that had the Rancho Laguna de San Antonio land grant of 25,000 acres. And it's between Petaluma and Stinson Beach. It's kind of right between them. And he lost most of that land. They had a court battle. And the cool thing about that wasn't great for him because he lost the land. But Maria's name comes up a lot because she was an heir. She and James Smalley were heirs. So, Maria's father, Higuera, most likely died when she was 4 during the Bear Flag Revolt. So, Elliot and Beeson were against her father. So, anybody wanting a fun project, I think it would be great to research that some more.
Could you tell us what the Bear Flag Revolt is about?
I can tell you what the Bear Flag Revolt is about. I taught 8th grade history for 30 years. I think I remember. Okay, there was the Mexican-American War, and at the end of that, there was a treaty, and Mexico was ceded Arizona, New Mexico, California, and there were lots of people living in California who obviously did not like that, and they would be, on their side.
Beeson and Elliot.
Yes, and she is from Sinaloa, Mexico, so she would be on the Mexican side. So there were a lot of people, depending on, there was a huge land grant here, and all the missions were established by the Spanish, so there were a lot of Mexicans in California, or Spaniards in California, who wanted California to remain part of Mexico, but there were a lot of immigrants now from the East Coast who wanted to be their own state.
Wow. Tell us your name.
I'm Mary O'Brien.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so we're gonna let's find the fairs. Anybody see them?
Yeah, it's all back here somewhere.
No. Here they are. Right over here. They were English. Where's our English couple? Do you know the fairs? Okay. Fairs. So this is really interesting. John Thomas Fair from England. His wife was Libby. The Libby. Guys. Libby Larson.
Why is Libby amusing to you?
Because Libby is the restaurant in Philo that we all know. So Libby, when John died, she married John Lemon. So there you go. For those of us that live here and ate at Libby's all the time, that's what happened. So the Lemon family was part of the Fair family. Actually, not DNA, because he had died and she remarried. So there's a little sad story here, though. This is Thelma. And she was at a fair here in town. And so she was about 14. And they had a offer to ride in an airplane. You know where this story's going. It crashed right there at the fairgrounds. It went up, around, and crashed. And she died right there in front of everybody. So that was pretty grim. So daughter Eva, their daughter, married Alva Cass Ingram. So raise your hand if you're an Ingram Fair type person. Okay. Do you all know each other? Do you have you know that you're cousins with all these people? Okay. So we already talked about the Ingrams when Ellen. Where's Ellen? Are you married? I'm married. Are you named after Mary Ellen Clow? Do you think that's where you got the name Ellen?
Possibly. There's a lot of Marys in our family. But
Are
we
you
have a
Mary
couple-
Ellen?
I am just Ellen K.
Okay.
And Grandma Lemons is buried on the other side of this first road.
So there you go. I didn't know that about the Fair Lemon connection until I did this research. Okay, well, we're almost done. We're going to go to the Herefords. The Herefords is right behind us, right here, watching for footstones, watching for footstones. So this is Bennett Hereford. I have a picture of his wife. Who just sent that to me? Somebody just sent me. Maybe they couldn't come, but they sent me her photograph.
She couldn't come.
So using Clem Hereford's diary was really, really important to find her. And it's in the car. Sorry. So I do have a photograph of her. We're almost done, and we're going to go back to the rose room and spread things out a little bit. You want to know where to put that, huh?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. We're going to put that in just 1 second. Okay, they lived up at Peachland. So if you have a chance to purchase his diary, it's fabulous. It's so interesting. So there are kids buried married into the Sanders family, the McNeil family, Adcock family. So, but it was very hard to figure out who was here. So I took my fingers and I just brushed all of this. And here's an H, and here's an E, and here's an R, and another R. And a Y. See the Y? You see it? There's an F. Bingo. That's who it is. And this is one of their sons over here. So when you're trying to figure things out, sometimes looking at the same style or same technique is really helpful. For example, that little enclosure there, a sweet picket fence, I only figured that out because up at the Philo Cemetery, Shields, there's the exact same style around another family. So those are the Watsons. They have two little 2-year-olds buried there. So, see this rose? This is a McGimsey rose. See this? That is a McGimsey rose. It's deathly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Stubblefield rose doesn't have very big thorns.
It's stubby.
Yeah, stubby.
Speaking of the Stubblefield Rose,
Yeah.
have you already been over there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got here late. Ken Murray.
Are you Murray?
Yeah, Stubblefield Murray.
Well, we're going to stand here in the shade a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about the Murray family? Would you like to? We talked about Esam Clody. We talked about him a little bit.
Oh, well, my family's got a lot of mystery in it, like a lot of pioneer families. We don't know whether we came over as convicts or indentured servants or what, because but the family history, oral history, says we were kicked out of Scotland. We were on the wrong side. If you've seen
Jacobites.
if you've seen the Outlander TV series, that's pretty accurate to a lot of what happened. The oral history is we got shipped out of Scotland, lands confiscated, went to Ireland, because they were trying to make room for the British there in Scotland. Went to Ireland, and then it goes dark until 1850, when my great-great-grandfather, Stephen Cleveland Murray, shows up in a 1850 census. It was the first census west of the Mississippi. And he and 2 other Murrays took some land in Missouri right near the border. It wasn't really good land, but the land records show that there were three of them. And they had outlined the properties so that one of them could be a stockade, because it was still Indian country, and if they had to retreat to the stockade, they could do that. And then Stephen Cleveland was involved in the fur trade when it was booming in the early 1800s, and he had come out to the Rocky Mountains. He wasn't a mountain man, he was more of a transportation guy. My family were longtime teamsters. Any wagon, any horse, oxen, mules, they drove them. Well, anyway, he had been out west of the Rockies when gold was discovered in our fair state here. And he was one of the few people who knew the way. So he went to Independence and signed up with a wagon train that was headed out, and he brought them out here with help with some other people, about 100 people the first trip out to California. Then he went back to Missouri, and he had 2 sons and a daughter, and rested up, got on his horse again, rode again from Missouri to California, led his own wagon train this time. and that was a successful wagon train. They were using Beckworth Pass, which is north of Donner, and the way the story goes that the Indians knew the best path over the mountains, but nobody ever asked them. And so he was one of the people. He knew Jim Beckworth. He said, "There's got to be something better, a better way to go." He said, "Sure, I'll show you where the pass is. Give me some money, and I'll help your wagon train get over the Sierras." And that became Beckworth Pass. So that was his second trip. What they don't tell many stories of is, only about 25% of the people that came out stayed. There was a whole migration back to the Midwest, to the East Coast, and so he was making money both directions, leading them out, taking them back.
Interesting.
And anyway, he came back from trip 2, and his wife had died. Malaria had come up from New Orleans, up the Mississippi, up the Missouri River, and they didn't know what it was, but people were dying around the rivers there at that time. He came back, and his wife had died, and Susan Cody, she married 4 times, so
Yes.
there are a lot of names, but she was originally Cody. She was the neighbor of Stephen Cleveland, and he went over, and she had helped nurse his wife. So they spent the winter getting to know each other, I guess. And he said, "I'm going back to California one more time." So they married up, as they said, sold their land. They had 6 wagons. And I don't know, it took people's life savings to get 1 wagon. She had some money, he had some money. So they head out 6 months out here to California. Well, they were doing more than just cooking and riding in the wagons because she was pregnant. And she was a midwife, nurse. That's why she's kind of famous around here. She delivered babies for 50 years here. Well, not that, 40 years here in this valley. She was the only midwife / doctor north of San Francisco. So anyway, so they go over Beckworth Pass. They make it to Marysville, to the Buttes, if you know where the Buttes are over there. And she said, "I can't go any further. I'm going to have this baby." So at age 48, she had my great-grandfather, Isom Clota Murray. And they hung out there for a while, and then they proceeded, across the Sacramento River, went down to where Highway 12 is now, because he had led wagon trains to Sonoma, Napa, and usually they ended in Petaluma because they could access the bay there. They would unload goods. If they hadn't dropped them off to the miners, they would drop them off there at Petaluma, and they would ferry them into the city. So anyway, they spoke to some people that they'd brought out earlier, and they said, "Well, there's this little valley. We run sheep, and we ran sheep up into this valley now, and don't tell everybody about it. And there doesn't appear to be a Spanish land claim on it anymore." Yeah. So they provisioned up in Petaluma again, took their wagons, and they had brought extra plows and hardware and things to sell when they got out here because they knew there was a shortage. So anyway, they followed these sheep drovers' directions, and they ended up in Yorkville, I guess, first. And of course, they pushed up into the valley here, and she had this little bitty baby. I mean, you talk about, she bumped all the way from Independence, Missouri to basically Marysville, California, pregnant, and had the baby. Yeah. Everybody was safe in the wagon train, and then the child was Isom Clota, my great-grandfather, and there's a lot of mystery around that too, because the family claims he was murdered. They found his body in one of the creeks at a ford crossing, and he had a pretty big head wound, but had been in the water for a few days. The family story is that he was gambling in Boonville with some rough characters, and they got in a disagreement about cards, and this man threatened to kill him for cheating, but he was pretty quick, so he made it back to his cabin, got a horse, but it'd been storming a lot, and he attempted to ford a creek apparently, and they called it dry gulching, although it was flooding. I don't know how that. But when you have to cross a gully, and anyway, I think 4 days later they found his body. So there was a lot of disagreement about what happened, and he left 3 kids. My grandfather, Charles Murray, who was raised here, his sister Bertie, and his brother Arthur, all redheads. So there was definitely some red hair running around here in the valley, but they still had their mother, but their dad was dead. So they were kind of wild kids running around speaking bootlink and trying to
A little early for that.
trying to be Christian kids. So anyway,
So
a
Ida,
lot of mysteries.
Ida is there. Her,
Ida Bell Davis, yeah.
so you can find her as well.
Okay.
She's right across from him.
Oh, from
Clody.
Clody. That's in Yorkville, right?
No, he's here. We were just visiting him.
Oh, how was he?
Fine, because he's under a rose bush.
Good. Okay. Well, I mean, there's lots more, but and somebody must be related to me, through marriage. I've got Andersons and Grimsby's, and because those 2 sons that Stephen Cleveland had prior to marrying Cody, they lived here too, and my uncle Cleve married Rhoda Anderson.
There you go.
10 kids.
So some advice. This is why in Anderson Valley you can never talk smack about anyone because you're talking to somebody's cousin.
Yeah.
So everybody's related. So I did not talk about the Rileys. Are there any Rileys here? I was trying to hit more of the people that came in the 1860s to 1880s. But we have the Rileys over here, and James Riley. Christine Clark is not here, is she?
No, she's
Okay,
gone.
she's a direct descendant of that family. That was the first white child. He married the first white child born in Anderson Valley, Christine Clark. So our Christine Clark is a direct line. Also, I just walked right on by JT Doc Brown. Doc Brown was he was the doctor that did come, and apparently he was quite a character too. Could you hold this for a second? This is a little tiny story. So just throw these up in the air; it'll come down.
By the way,
right.
did you mention that Susan Cody's first cousin was Buffalo Bill Cody?
No, we haven't talked about that. Go
Oh.
talk,
Oh, well,
because I'm trying to find this.
they were all frontier families, and Buffalo Bill was her first cousin, and I guess he was like 13 or 14 when he headed out on the plains, and he was a Pony Express rider. He did all kinds of crazy things before he did his Wild West show. And then Susan Cody's son, Roulette, who came out with them, he later joined the Wild West show, and I think they went to Europe even. They put the show on a boat.
Wow.
So we're all getting exhausted here. So the Prathers married into the Browns, and so this little gal, Esther Brown, her one grandfather was a Prather, and one grandfather was Doc Brown. And she said, I was scared to death of him and was afraid to have a stomach ache for fear Papa would take me to him and he would feel my stomach and look at my tongue. I wasn't the only one afraid of him. When he was sent for, the women cleaned house and changed the sick bed, and the children stood to attention. One mother complained that her child wouldn't stay in bed as she was ordered. Grandpa Brown pulled her out of bed, administered a good spanking, and she stayed in the bed after that. So, yes?
Go to Blanche Brown?
Yes, he is the grandfather of Blanche Brown. So Blanche Brown we're all very fond of because she's our wildflower, maven. She's the one that started the wildflower show in 1926. So 1920, anyway, we're 100 years now of wildflower shows. Okay, so we're just going to go over here. This is the clouds. Do we have any clouds here? There we go. Come on down. Come on, Joan. These three big enclosures are clouds. Before we talk about them, though, this is David Lear. And William Rose and David Lear were killed in the same thresher explosion. So that there was a lot of accidents in the woods, accidents in, logging, accidents with apple dryers and everything else. So this is the clouds. On the original spelling, and you can correct me, anybody here who knows better, the original spelling is K-L-A-U, but became phonetic clow. Find somebody to hold this.
Yeah, you heard that.
Hold this.
Are these white signs things that you have created, Valerie?
The white sign, yes. Section B. All right. I just got to get rid of this stuff. Here, you hold it. Thank you. Okay. They came from Michigan. Henry Carl Clow, which is down there. This fellow here. He was a lighthouse keeper in the U.S. Coast Guard. So we have to put him on the military list. I don't think I have on the military list. Anyway, he was a lighthouse keeper for Copper Harbor before he came here. Which is very interesting.
Where's Copper Harbor? What state is that?
Michigan. Yeah. So he was the husband of Mary Ellen Rock, where she is actually buried out at Cuffy's Cove. That's another one where you can find some of these folks, the pioneers. This is Carl Clow, who his wife, Lenora Harrison, here she is, Lenora, right here. Where's Joanne Borges? Okay, so anyway, Lenora Harrison, pretty sure she's up at Shields. Her mother was East Lick. Anyway, she dies of typhoid fever. When the baby, I think they had 3 or 4 children at that time. And so she dies with these little babies. And so this is Carl's sister, Eliza. And Eliza was a teacher, but she resigned from teaching to take care of those babies, those little children, and raise them. So here, I know this is her because the tombstone has her initials on it. So we have a kind of a tragedy that happened here in probably 79, 80, where we had some vandalism. A tremendous amount of stones got pulled over and broken. And so if she lost, well, it's very confusing because the family has a picture of her stone that must have been taken before that happened. But if you look around, like here's the Rawls, you can see quite a few of them that have been patched together again. There's another one there. There's another one there. The Joseph Rawls and his wife were both broken. So, yeah, that happened. So she lost hers. completely. So why? I can't understand why they would take it away. That's it. I think there's so many more little stories, but I think we've pretty much done Once Over Lightly. Is there anything you're disappointed that we didn't talk about? Again, I tried to focus on the earliest people.
Am I going to do
Yes,
Zach,
come.
or
Yes.
do you still want me to talk about Zach, or are we out of time?
Oh no, we've got to talk about Zach. Zachary Blevins. We've got to talk about him because he's renowned because we call coffee a horn of Z's.
Okay, so
Zachariah Clifton.
his. Oh, they're over here. I'm just going to walk over and out of respect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If anybody's tired, it's okay. Sorry. I'll try to be brief. Okay, so this is Zachariah Clifton Blevins. This is Susan Sophronie Duff. So the Blevins and the Duffs arrived to Boonville in about 1881, early 1880s. I'd like to talk about each, and I'm going to start here. So Zachariah died when he was about 83. His eldest son was an attorney and judge in Missouri and in St. Louis. My great-grandfather was a doctor, a horse and buggy doctor in Woodland in Yolo County, and started the first clinic there. So my grandpa's grandfather is Zachariah, and when my grandpa was 9, Zachariah went to stay at his son's house, who was the doctor, my grandpa's dad. And so my grandpa would go in every morning and tickle his feet to wake up. And he'd laugh, and then they'd get up and have fun. And my grandpa remembers this story so vividly. He told it his whole life. He said he went in one morning, and he went to tickle Grandpa Zach's feet. And he wouldn't move, and it didn't wake up. Well, he was gone. So that's sort of a fun little family story that we like to giggle about with Zach. He came from a family of long hunters. The Blevins brothers are notorious in the 1750s and 1780s in eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, and they actually, both families, the Duffs and the Blevins, have a history of long hunters in their family, as well as people who were in the same regiment in. Wait, sorry, I'm going to mix it all up because I'm trying to go too fast. So sorry.
What kind of hunter?
They were long hunters.
What's that mean?
A long hunter, they cleared the Cumberland Gap. So Daniel Boone, Squire Boone, Alicia Wallen, they went out in pairs of like 2 to 3, and they would go for months, and they would have these long rifles, and they would go and hunt bear and sometimes panthers and deer, and then they'd get pelts and bring them back and sell them for the markets to go to trade with the Indians or to trade overseas. And so these pelts, the Blevins brothers were known as having like the biggest crop of pelts. Like there's writings in early papers and historical. Sullivan County has some words about them. But the Civil War is tricky to trace because, not the Civil War. Zachariah was a Confederate in the 37th and 34th Regiment in the Civil War. And his brother was also in the Civil War in the same regiment with him, as was Thomas Jefferson Vestal, who married. There's a whole thing. It's tricky because Zach has a sister named Martha Virginia Blevins, and Susan Sophronie Duff has a sister named Martha Evelyn Duff, married T.J. Vestal. That's how we're
Great-grand.
which is yes, and
Great-grand.
yes, and so it's the Martha's got me spinning for a while, but I finally figured it out, and yeah, it's kind of like a Rubik's cube. It's so fun. I love it.
Got a big board,
Oh, I have it.
yarn, and
Well, I have.
Actually, down to the Little Red Schoolhouse, I made up big boards that everybody could look at.
That's fantastic. I actually started a website, family history website for my family. So it will be up, and that this will all be laid out a little bit more clean, and I will share that. But Zach's father's name was Napoleon Bonaparte Blevins, and his mother was named Catherine McQueen. Catherine McQueen's family, her grandfather was in the American Revolution, and he too came over from Scotland after the clearings, after the Battle of Culloden. I've been to Scotland in the Highlands a couple times, and the Duff family is so interesting to research there. But they definitely did go through Ireland. They stopped in Ireland. They got removed. They were definitely not allowed to stay. So anyway, so that's kind of in a nutshell there. In the Civil War, he was mounted cavalry. So like his long hunter ancestors, he loved horses, rode them all his life. He had a very long gun. There's a picture in the museum you have that shows his long gun and his saddle. I have a beautiful pastel portrait of him that's about this big. That was, my grandfather did it for him. And I reframed it in museum glass because I was so taken with it, and nobody in my family wanted it. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 30. I was like, I want it. So I have it hanging in my family room, and I love it so much.
Neat.
Yeah, and these little rocks that are sitting here by the grave sites, I was here by myself in June of 2021 looking for them, and and so I found them. I walked all through the cemetery having no idea where they were, and I was a little kind of creepy, to be honest. I didn't know the area. I didn't know where it was, and I did come up the stairs. Sorry, I didn't know there was a parking lot. And but I brought these stones from Pebble Beach. Actually, I live on the Monterey Peninsula, and I made them at the hotel with little hearts. And I was shocked to see them still here. So whoever's taking care of the cemetery, thank you.
yeah.
And I know you guys are ready to go. I have more things to share, but I really don't need to.
Well, I'm so glad you said something. So, how many of you have gone ahead and joined Find a Grave? Good, good. Now, find a grave. Once you find a person, then what you do is you hit map it, and it goes to Google Maps. And then you can go and drill in there and say, oh, I'm right next to William Rose. There's William Rose. Wait a second. If I turn, there. Now if I walk straight, I'll walk right into him. So if you're from out of town, any cemetery, most of the cemeteries now have volunteers, have done this. So you can go anywhere and not be reliant on maps or anything else. You just find your person, and sometimes it might say go to SFO and take a plane to get you to your grave. But so I want to encourage you to use Find a Grave, all of you. I also want to encourage you to use it because you can upload photos, stories, and I think it'd be a wonderful site for us to have like a community scrapbook. Because people put photos and stories up on, you're from Anderson Valley, and a lot of those could go directly on Find a Grave and be enjoyed by people everywhere. So, okay, so that's. Have I missed anybody wanting to contribute? Because I'm sorry, sorry, Cammie. Okay.
Well, let me just say,
We've been here a while. We'll stay here probably.
well, we're going to the Rose Room for goodies and something to drink. So why don't you guys come and continue to tell stories?
Yes.
We would love to hear them. So just everybody head to the Rose Room at the museum and listen to more stories.
And they have a nice bathroom.
And they have a great bathroom.
But there are porta potties here.